rocking chairs on the front and back porches and rock and smile. Whenever somebody would come up, they'd say, yeah, Norman cured me of cancer. It was a lie. But hey, there's no business in town. It's all tourist industry. You can't farm, at least row crops, because there's no flat land. And there's too many rocks to plow. People were literally starving to death, and Norman saved them. These people in the rocking chairs, hey, it's either go ahead and tell the lie and get paid and feed your family, or don't tell a lie and watch your family starve to death. So, these people told the lie. Norman ran this for 26 months. He made the equivalent in today's dollars of $64 million off these poor people. Yeah.
Wow.
People were spending their last dime, selling everything they had to send their loved ones here. They thought he could cure their cancer. Well, everything's going well for the hospital. Norman got a little bit big for his britches and said, you know, you don't need this mayor. You got me, Norman Baker. I'm all you'll ever need. Well, I got the mayor riled. Time to get rid of Norman. It's a small town. Everybody's related. The mayor's brother was the postmaster. He said, you know, Norman has sent out about 330,000 of these flyers all across the United States, all over the world, saying he could cure your cancer in 6 weeks without surgery, radium, or x-ray. They started working with the feds. They got him on 7 counts of mail fraud. Not practicing without a license. Mail fraud.
Wow.
It was something easy and quick they could get him for, get him thrown into prison. Just like the gangster Al Capone from Chicago. Remember what they got him for? Tax evasion. Get him in jail. Get him out of circulation. Norman was given a sentence of 4 years in Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary in northeast Kansas, about 40 miles from where I'm originally from, and a $4,000 fine. Well, he was a model prisoner. He was going to get out in 3 years on good behavior. But true to his nature and his hatred for doctors, he got into a fist fight with a prison doctor one day. So they slapped an extra 3 months on him. 3 years, 3 months, $4,000 fine. He got out. Came back here to Eureka Springs to look up his longtime girlfriend, Norma Yount, because he had given her all of his money. He didn't believe in banks. So he had suitcase after suitcase after suitcase after suitcase full of cold hard cash. He was afraid if he had it, the feds would confiscate it. So before he went to prison, he gave it to her for safekeeping so she could stash it. When he got back here, found out she'd married a Texas senator's son. And she said, there's really no money left, nothing to speak of. I don't know how you spend that much money so fast. But she claimed she did, so he sued her. The judge said, well, Norman, you get a third of what's left, she gets a third of what's left, and her new husband gets a third of what's left. Darndest thing I've ever heard of. Well, he went back to Muscatine, Iowa with his third of the money. Got with city officials and basically said, hey, it's me, Norman Baker. Remember me? I'm back. I want to put in a tuberculosis hospital. And they just as much as said, no, you don't. Get out. They didn't want anything to do with it. So he ended up buying a yacht. Some people say, well, it was more like an old houseboat. Lived the rest of his days off the coast of Florida. He died in 1958, a couple of months before his 76th birthday. And what he died of? Cancer.
Wow.
Karma's a bitch.
Yep.
It was complicated with cirrhosis of the liver, so he was apparently a drinker too. Well, they took his body back to Muscatine, Iowa for the funeral, dressed him in his white linen suit, purple silk shirt, purple silk tie, his favorite clothing. Remember how many people I said showed up for the cat's funeral? The whole staff, plus another 50 people or so? 5 people showed up for Norman's funeral. His own family wouldn't even show up. The 5 guys that were there, it was speculated that Norman owed them money. So they were probably there just to make sure he was good and dead and not flim-flamming them again. They had to hire 6 junior college students to act as pallbearers to get Norman in the ground. He's buried next to one of his sisters there at Muscatine. Should be the end of Norman Baker, but it's not. See, in those flyers, he had pictures of jars full of tumors he said he removed from his patients. Said, proof of our success. But wait a minute, he didn't do surgery. And nobody died here. Where did he get those tumors? I don't think he thought that part through. He even had them on display up in the lobby. All those disappeared when he went to prison. They didn't know what happened to him. But February 2019, our gardener was doing some digging out back for a gardening project. She started getting glass and lots of it. Started digging carefully, started pulling up jars with unknown substances inside. Called the police, not a police matter. They got the University of Arkansas archaeological team down here to do a formal dig. They found over 500 jars and bottles with unknown substances inside.
Ooh.
It was on CNN. It was on all the major networks. You want to go see those samples? Follow me into what we call the parts room.
Keep it going, Lion. Keep it going.
Please watch your step right here, and as we walk in.
Okay. There you go. She's had spasms.
Just after I sit, I get.
If you want to see the actual dig site during daylight hours, go out around the hotel down to where they do the axe throwing. There's a little building they've built there with a glass front. You can see that's where the actual dig site was. Well, all we've done is just cleaned them up. We have not added anything to them. Some of them still have liquid. That's the way they came out of the ground. Here's an old bone saw because Norman did illegal autopsies down in the autopsy room. We had a lady on the tour that said she was a surgical nurse, and she said, well, that kind of looks like human fat. Over here, some bottles, have some pills and other liquids in it. See, this ran as a small community hospital, too. They had a guy that basically had they called it an eclectic medical degree. That was a degree they gave out in the Depression years. Basically, he had advanced first aid. Give you something for a headache, stomach ache, maybe give you a stitch or two. That's about it. Sometimes people would come here and say, oh my gosh, I've got this terrible stomach ache. Well, let's examine you. Oh my gosh, you've got stomach cancer. We need to admit you immediately, and here's what you owe us. Well, within a couple of days, their stomach ache was gone. Proof of our success, another satisfied customer. They never had cancer to start with,
Wow.
but they convinced them that they did and bilked them out of all that money. The green bottles up here, they think that might be lung tissue based on how it looks. And the bottles right here, they think might be that formula number 5 or the ingredients for it. Norman would stand right over the people's shoulders as they mixed that to make sure they got it just right. Why? It couldn't cure anything. Well, think about this. He was lying to his patients, getting them to believe this was real. So he lied to his staff to get them to buy into it that it was real. By all accounts, there was maybe a handful of people here that knew this was all fake. Everybody else bought into it that it was real. Yeah.
Wow.
Let's go to the autopsy room. Out the door and to the right.
That one?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, when this was the original hotel, this was the kitchen. That maintenance office wasn't there. The laundry room on the other side wasn't there. It was one great, big kitchen. This was their ice box, cold storage room. They didn't have electric refrigeration. So this was all lined with cork to help insulate it. It had shelves in the walls. You put your perishables in there, and then you slide in big blocks of ice that they would get from the ice house, which was down by the railroad depot. Then shut this big heavy door. Keep things nice and cool. When Norman came here, he wanted an autopsy room and a morgue, so he moved the kitchen one floor up. This is where he stored the dead bodies. They think it'll hold about 28 bodies.
Oh.
Well, in the 26 months he ran this, 42 people died, so there never were very many bodies in there at any one time. But he'd keep them in there on ice until he decided it was time to do their autopsy. wheel him out in here, do the autopsy. It wasn't sanctioned by anybody. He didn't have permission from the family to do it. Totally illegal. Are you all familiar with the Ghost Adventures TV show?
Yeah.
When they did their episode down here, they said, yep, here's the original autopsy table. Well, sorry, Zach Bagans, this is a kitchen sink from the 1950s. Original autopsy table set right here. We don't know what happened to it. It's gone. But that drain is where the bodily fluids would drain.
Ew.
People bring down their EMF detectors, and they'll beep, beep, till they get about knee high right above that, and all of a sudden it's beep, 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 most nights. There's nothing electrical down there that would set that meter off. In fact, the drain's even plugged up, closed off. But apparently there's enough residual haunting from all those bodily fluids that went down there that it still causes those EMF detectors to go crazy. People take pictures in the mirror over there. Take pictures of this mirror too. One little lady, I'd say 13, 14 years old, had her mom's phone. She was taking pictures of herself right here. Then she stood over against the wall and started looking at her pictures. And she let out this shriek. Turned out one of the pictures, the tall man, an apparition that's seen down here every once in a while. About this tall, taller than anybody on the tour. He was in ghostly form. He's standing right behind her. Her mother said, well, look at your shoulder. There was a hand on her shoulder.
Oh, wow.
Just like if she was in front of me and I was posing, I was the tall man posing for the picture, and I placed my hand on her shoulder. We used that door right there, and I hope whatever school she went to, they got her on her track team, because that little girl was out that door and gone in a heartbeat. I didn't see her again. Before COVID, we put the entire tour group inside here, shut the door, turn off the lights so you could all experience what pitch black looked like. We're still not doing that yet because of COVID. But I'm going to share with you what I think is the scariest thing down here. And I just want you to be real quiet and just listen. Maybe all you'll hear is your own breathing or your own heart beating, but just listen for a second. That's somebody upstairs. Sometimes we'll hear a little tap. Not just one, but two taps back in here. Other people say they hear it back in there. I don't know. I'm always standing here. Other times people say they feel like a little tickle in their ears. Or maybe something's brushed the hairs on the back of their neck. Other times people say they hear whispering. We had one lady on the tour. She was standing over there and she says, I heard whispering, I think I've got it. She was recording with her phone the whole time. She brought it over to me, turned it way up and started playing it back so I could hear it. And at first I didn't hear anything. Then I started hearing whispers, but it was more like it was mumbling. And then the words started coming through pretty darn clear. And I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It sounded like it was saying, put money in the tip jar.
Oh, wow.
Hey, I'm not one to go against the spirit. If you decide to leave anything for me, I guarantee it's greatly appreciated. But it's entirely up to you. Now, I'll let you have just a few minutes, take a few pictures. I've got to get back upstairs so I've got another tour. But I'll be in the other room doing what I have to do for COVID. I have to spray down the seats still that you all were sitting in.
Oh, wow.
So
Fun.
whenever you're ready to leave, that does conclude the tour.